I am the Judas Resurrection.
I was up at the old Gaylord town a couple weeks ago, and since then, in the land of my people. And I was at my mother and father's house going through things because they're gone now, and we're taking care of that sort of thing. I'm trying to be better about it, but I'm so far away. And my second brother had saved some stuff that could have ended up in the dumpster, and I came through a box and I recognized this photo packets. Yeah, do you trust him? Yeah, pay him to come to your house. He gets twice the payment because he's coming back. But I recognize this photo packet from the days when we were in the good old days, when we had cameras and we had to have people having access to everything we had as a memory so that they could try to gauge who we are as an individual and how we keep our memories. But I recognize this is a Fort Bragg Photoshop. I guess I should probably put it on if I'm going to talk about Bragg. Okay. That way, people understand this is a real thing. 307th Engineer Battalion, 82nd Airborne Division. Hoorah, hooah, hooah. We would say. They tried to make us say. I never went with it too much, but yeah, that's where I was. I'm about to show you someplace else I was. Because I grabbed these, I'm like, wow, he saved those. And they were photos that rolls of film that I would send back to my mother, and she would make duplicates, and she made, what do you call it, photo albums for me out of those. And she would give me the copies, but there were some that didn't make it into the albums, I guess. And well, I threw them all in the back of my car, and I brought them back down here. That's been a couple weeks. I haven't emptied it all yet. And today when I picked up the kit, I noticed there was one of these in the back, right there on top. And I said, well, I'll take a look. Who knows what's going to be in there? It could be something from Girls or something. I mean, you know, I was a young kid. I don't know what these pictures are. And the kid knows that I was in Desert Shield and Desert Storm. And I figured, well, let's take a look. These are from Bragg. And I pulled the photos out. And the first thing I see is, well, I shifted them. But this was the first one I saw. I said, wow, look at that. I said, there I am. I said, I'm in Iraq next to a MiG of some sort. I think, or there's one blowing up back there anyway. And what the Iraqis did when we were showing up, they pulled all their jets out of the hangars because they knew that we would blow up their hangars. and they put them out on the streets in the surrounding area, and we just went around and blew them up. There I am, just standing there. I wasn't a smoker at the time. It looks like I'm lighting a cigarette, but that's that. I said, look at that. I said, isn't that something? I said, you know, it's just provenance. All these people tell you stories about how they were over there and they were in what, and you really can't question it because they're just stories. But here the photos are. In the next one, look at that. There I am. There's some old aircraft that had a cockpit that was open. We weren't even going to bother blowing that up. It was already destroyed. But I'm sitting in it. Look at me. With that J. Archer Elderquist shit-eating grin. Look at me. I'm like that guy from the Stephen King novels, the something of Pert, that would fly around in an airplane. Yeah, he was a giant. Look at how big I look in that goddamn thing. And I'm like, look at that. And here's a picture right before our artillery. We blew up some bunkers with supposed shit in them. And I walked through the bunkers. There were crates and crates and crates, and they all had the stamp of Imam Jordan on them. I thought, they're supposed to be our friends. But we went way back when set it up to explode, to blow the thing up, all their munitions and everything. We went very far back, and I got a picture when it first started blowing up across the desert. And then artillery started coming in. And over the radio, I got out of the Humvee, I'm sure, and people were jumping, getting out of the way. And there was artillery coming in. And it was spinning around. It wasn't blowing up where we were. And I'm sitting there, I'm going, and Staff Sergeant Miller, he had one land right in front of him. He's just like hiding behind a Humvee over there. And he's like, and it's going around him. He told the story. I saw the same stuff. And over the radio, as I'm sitting going, on the other side of the Humvee. Because if I'm going to die, I'm going to die. This is fucking awesome. What a fuck up. They rigged it wrong. But over the radio, I hear this captain saying, all right, we got artillery coming in. And on the other side of the line, the guy's like, it's all right, it's not armed. And he says, bullshit, it's not armed. We got people bleeding over here. And I'm going, you fucked up. But then the next picture, look at that one. It's, what is that? Oh, that's me standing on top of a tank that we blew the fuck out of. That it's entrenched in the ground to be in hiding, and I'm standing on top of the damn turret thing, whatever. And look, what we notice in these pictures is I look like a fucking giant. I look like I'm standing on the enemy. Look at that guy. That's not my penis. That's an M16A2. And, well, there's that. And look at that young guy. Fresh out of the shower, ready for a fight. I'm a lover, not a fighter. I'm a fighter and a fucker. There's one of their MiGs the Russians had under some camo netting. That didn't seem to work. But see, that's what I said. This stuff, it's provenance. It's stuff that I didn't even know was around. And you look, you see green fields. We were in Iraq in the winter when there were rains. What I recognized when I saw that, the reason I even took the picture is because with some rain, things grew. And I looked at that and I said, wow, huh, this is the cradle of civilization. This is fertile ground. This is deforestation that has moved around the cities. That places in China has Dafeng, big wind in the spring. Big winds come through and blow sandstorms down through the alleys of the streets, and you go, ah! You hide inside, and the temperature drops about 20 to 30 degrees. You're like, wow! You just barely escape being sandblasted. But I just I looked at that and I said, if they spent as much money on irrigation as they do on munitions in the Iraqi military, which could apply to any government, then they would have enough food. People were doing fine there before somebody showed up and decided to just have old arguments. Well, I said to the kid, I said, this is provenance. That's a word I learned off of watching Antique Roadshow with my dad. Provenance. It's proof of your tale. It's a signature on a piece of paper that was given at the same time as a gift. It's provenance. People like to say that I didn't do any of this stuff. That's me. It's me. I got the hat. And you might not think it relates, and I suppose it probably doesn't. But that's not to be sure. I'm switching to the idea of something I talked about a few years ago, a couple of years ago. As they were talking about it, before they were talking about it, and I was saying, okay, we're going to have a civil war. How's this going to work in the United States? How can there be a civil war? There's no North and South the way it was before. Because agriculture is not driving divisiveness so much. It's not so easily explained away that way. We're all over the place with different ideas and people holding all over the place. And I think we found out it's not just about the guy next door. Hey, can you trust him? How's this thing going to work? Who's the enemy? We found out how they can start it. They're taking National Guard from different states to states that will not assign their National Guard to what the federal government wants. That poor guy. So they're sending National Guard from other places to these states. Well, what about the National Guard that are in these states? These governors will not put them in place because they don't agree. But they might put them in place to fight off invaders, unwelcome immigrants. There's your damn, I think that's one of those Fourth or Sixth Amendment things, constitutional stuff where you do not have to house foreign enemies. If you've got a National Guard coming from another state when it's not been accepted that they're necessary, they become a foreign invader in a sense. And so next thing, these states that don't want Texas National Guard people in their town, look, those poor bastards from Texas, they're like, I got to leave my job. Sure, it's fun for the first week. You get TDY, temporary duty pay, and DM, carpe diem, whatever it is, per diem. You get paid by the day a certain amount, They're like, we can make some money off of this. I might get an Apple Watch, but your kids are still going to be hungry after you bought the Apple Watch and didn't spend the money on food when you were away from your job. Do they really want to be going up there? Some of them. Nobody likes them at home anyway. They just act like they do. The cigarette went out. So the governors of these states that don't want National Guard in their cities might just end up needing to put National Guard into their cities, not to protect the ICE agents who, in these photos of Iraq, I became friends with a guy that ended up in ICE, and I have a hard time, not really, believing that he would support something like this, but he's Christian. I think he might even be Christ-like in his way of living, but it's hard to say when somebody's so much a full-blown Christian that they really have anything reasonable left in their decision-making, knowing how they've used Christianity through the years. Look what he did to me. I don't hold it against him. He's my friend. I have a friend in Jesus. His name is Bubba, and he's sharing a cell with him right now in Jackson. Oh, that's Jesus. And he's in him up to the hips. So they're going to have their own National Guard there in these cities is what is logical for the next step to protect the citizens and the protesters from the National Guard that's coming from another state. They're only supposed to take care of their own things. They're just following orders. Who was it that used to say that? I don't know, probably the generals at Nuremberg. Point is, this is how a civil war starts. People are going to be going between states, National Guards between states fighting each other. But this is also how it ends. Because if the people from the home state run into these guys that are trying to come in and protect the illegality of things that are going on around them, the guys from the home state are like, hey, man, did I go to basic with you? I ran into Ovitz, who got poison ivy all around his nutsack and his genitalia, because evidently he was masturbating when we were out in the field, and he got a bad case of the Ovitz. On my way out, when I was doing my out processing, I ran into him, and he happened to be like a medic or in the medical team at Bragg when I was leaving. I'm like, Ovitz. He's like, Elderquist. We knew each other. You run into Ovitz and he's coming from North Carolina or Texas and you're somewhere else. You might say, what the fuck are you doing, man? Remember how they tried to get me the whole time and they never broke me? Remember all you fuckers? Not you, Ovitz. You broke yourself. You became totally invisible, really, to everybody after you got a bad case of the Ovitz. And nobody talked about it anymore. What funnier thing is than that? what more is there to make fun of? Why don't we just talk seriously for a minute? And that might be what these states need to do. Send down their National Guard, see if they can be friendly. But you know, in every state, the National Guard comes from the locals. You can't count on them to be reasonable. You are the most important part of the Judas resurrection.
I am the Judas resurrection.